Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Satish sir. Can you hear me, Satish sir?
Good morning, sir.
My voice is audible, no?
Yes, sir. Your voice is audible. Your voice is audible.
Okay, fine.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Good morning, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah. Bharat, are we good to start?
Yes, ma'am, we can, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah. So, good morning, everyone. Good morning, respected chief guest, the HOD of CDC department, faculty and students. Very good morning. Welcome to the webinar series on universal human values. Today, students are given a lot of focus on skill development and building knowledge base, but very less focus is given to value education. When I was a school kid, I remember till my fifth grade, we used to have 1 hour of moral science class per week, and we really look forward to those classes where they'll be teaching us various moral values through activities, through stories, and through various other modes. And as we grew up, the hours started dropping from 1 hour to half an hour per week. And then when we got into high school, this was all scrapped out of the timetable, and we were given more focus on physics and science and mathematics. So it resulted in what? It resulted in a highly intellectual student group with very less EQ or very less moral values. And I think at least we had till our middle school, we had the mandatory moral value classes, but this generation, I don't think it is there in their timetable, even in the lower classes. So I think this was realized by the government of India, the Ministry of Education, and now they have made these value education classes mandatory in schools and in higher education. Very happy to know about this, and we wanted to somehow incorporate this into our curriculum. So we thought we will have this webinar series, and we'll try to enlighten students about at least few topics under value education. So we are starting off with righteousness today, and the speaker for today is Dr. Vijay Saradi. Dr. Vijay Saradi, he did his BA and MA in philosophy from Ramakrishna Mission Vivekananda College, Chennai, and he was a gold medalist during his university times, and he continued. He got his research, junior research fellowship, and then he continued his PhD in Pondicherry Central University, and his thesis is entitled "An Examination of Reductionism and Anti-Reductionism in Consciousness: A Study on John R. Searle." And his research interests include philosophy of mind, analytical philosophy, philosophy of language, philosophy of science, and logic. Currently, he is an assistant professor at the Madras Christian College, Tambram, and our dean has he was all praise about Dr. Vijay Saradi when he was talking about him. So we are very happy to have you here, sir. And the next 1 hour is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. I'm also the old school, like what you were saying. I also studied moral science till my 8th standard. I remember all those classes which we had. Thank you. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I'm audible to all of you?
Yes, sir. Yes, you
Yes,
can,
sir.
sir.
Okay, okay. What I'll do now is I'll just start sharing my screen. Then we can have a discussion on it. Let me know when my screen is visible.
It is visible, sir.
Okay. Has it come in slideshow? Fine, now?
Yes, sir. Yes. Now
Okay,
it is on
okay.
slideshow mode.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. And a very good morning to all of you. As ma'am was introducing me, I'm from Madras Christian College, and a slight change in the topic. Actually, not slight change. It's actually in congruence with righteousness. But when I was going through the literatures, what I felt is I cannot do justice by taking righteousness because it encompasses both the Indian and the Western tradition. So I thought to minimize it towards the Indian tradition. So I'll slowly dislodge what my topic is all about. For the moment, it is universal values and understanding on the concept of dharma. How do we understand dharma in the Indian context? That is my emphasis for today. And one more thing which I thought of telling it is uh, how people pursue this concept of dharma in the Indian tradition as well as in the Western tradition. That is the highlight for today. And one more thing which I wanted to say is the methodology which I have taken for today's topic is, one is a descriptive methodology, another one is a comparative methodology. Descriptive in the sense I'm not coming with the nuances of my own understanding of the concept of dharma. I'm just trying to explicitly put forward what the systems in Indian philosophy had on the value of dharma. That is one. Another one is, and also I'm trying to compare this concept of dharma from various schools in Indian traditions, how this concept actually has evolved and what are the intricacies in it. So moving towards the pitching in of the idea of values, where to put this idea of values. First of all, one has to understand from where it really originated. Because I come from analytical tradition, I always try to linger upon the basic or the fundamental of any subject. So any one of you can tell me what is this subject called philosophy deals with? Any one of the student can unmute and tell me. Rather than a monologue, I always prefer dialogue. If it is a one-to-one interaction, it would have been really nice. Anyone? Can you unmute and tell me? Can you unmute? Anyone? Is it possible, ma'am, or they can't unmute?
The option is no enable, sir. They can.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Among the student fraternity, can anyone tell me what is this subject called philosophy deals with? Anyone? We have a good number of students. Thought someone will throw me some light. The student? We have how many number? I think it's a sizable amount of students. No? Yeah,
it's
similarly
to speaking with ethics and logical things.
Okay. I'm happy that you come forward at least to give some answer. No, that is the step one. What we do as this discipline called philosophy, we try to question the fundamentals. If we talk about physics, or ma'am was mentioning about mathematics, in physics or in mathematics, we take numbers for granted. But actually what we do in philosophy is we question the fundamental which is taken for granted. I'll give one example. We call, what is the summation of 2 plus 2? Can anyone tell me? What is the addition of 2 plus 2? 2 plus 2?
4.
Okay, 2 apples plus 2 apples. Tough question. 2 apples plus 2 apples, ma?
4 apples.
2 apples plus 2 oranges.
4 oranges.
2 apples plus 2 oranges.
4 fruits.
2 apples plus 2 benches.
4 objects.
2 drop of water plus 2 drop of water.
4 drops.
If you are adding 2 drops of water plus 2 drops of water, will it come to 4 drops of water? Sure, are you sure? So we should do a practical one. Adding 2 drops of water plus 2 drops of water. So this is what we do. We try to question how this number system is taken in the first place as a fundamental thing. So philosophy as a discipline tries to understand the fundamentals of any subject. Also, it tries to question what the subject stands for. And also it stands as a critical evaluation of the subject, any subject. That is why a complete study on any subject is awarded with MPhil and PhD. You do whatever the discipline you might be, but after your master degree, if you're doing a degree, it will be called Master of Philosophy or Doctor of Philosophy. Whether it is in physics or chemistry or botany or zoology, it is immaterial. So this is the subject which is the fulcrum of, or you call it as the mother of all subjects. That is how Plato and Aristotle are the people who have been discussing about philosophy. Originally, philosophy is called as love of wisdom. So how knowledge arises, what is the difference between knowledge and wisdom? Those are the things that we will be dealing in philosophy. Among these branches of philosophy, we have metaphysics, epistemology, logic, ethics, and aesthetics. Can anyone tell me what is aesthetics? It's a very, at least one new word we will learn. No? What is aesthetics as a subject deals with? I'm a troublemaker because I always ask questions with my students. What is this subject called aesthetics? Can anyone tell me?
Sir, admiring different kinds of places.
Yeah, to a larger extent, it is fine and Nirupama. Aesthetics is a subject which deals with the problems of beauty. For example, anything that has to deal with beauty. What is beauty? What is ugly? What is this concept of music? What is this concept of decorations? All those things. Like that, we have ethics as a discipline or ethics as a branch of philosophy. Ethics comes as a subset of philosophy where it deals with a most important aspect of human thing called the rightness and wrongness of an action. So when an action is performed, how to test that action, or how to make the standard of the action, or how to evaluate that action. In order to study that, there is a specific discipline called ethics, which deals with rightness and wrongness of an action. So this is what I wanted to tell it to you. So this word ethics is derived from a Greek word called ethos. Ethos means it's nothing but an accumulation of custom or habit that we have for over a period of time. On a particular day, if you are doing certain things, it is not called as a custom. A prolonged way of people performing in certain way is called as a custom or habit. But now what is that one is? Now we have to say whether these actions are in the standard form to be called as a right action or a wrong action. Firdaus, can you please mute? Firdaus, thank you. So what is the standard that we keep for rightness and wrongness? So if I ask, killing is right or wrong? If I ask this question, killing is right or wrong? What will you say? Killing is right or wrong? I have to be with time also. Someone? Whether killing is right or wrong? Kanimari, tell me.
It is wrong.
It is wrong. But if you take Paramveer Chakra, Gallantry Award, in the borders, like we have a fight with Pakistan in the borders, if we are killing the terrorist or the other person who's intruding into our territory, in that position, killing is considered as right or wrong? Just simply, don't allow me to speak like I'm looking at the screen and talking. Sometimes I find it really difficult. It should be at least somewhat interactive.
It is still wrong, sir.
It is still wrong. Then why the Indian government is giving Gallantry Award or Paramveer Chakra for the person who killed another person? Think about this question. So an action performed there, it is geographically also very important. Not that an action can be absolutely called as right or wrong. An action is determined in certain parameters. Even in certain cultures, also an action to be called as right action or wrong action. For example, take this idea of monogamy and polygamy. In the Hindu system, one husband and one wife, monogamy is fine. It is the right. But if you take Islam, for example, there a person is allowed to marry 3 wives. So in a culture where one husband and one wife is right, the same thing is not there in the other religion or other culture. So how to understand right and wrong is not that easy for us to define. So how to understand it, that is what we do in ethics. Another one is, this is not like any other what Kanimodi was telling. We are not doing it based on an individual's perspective. Kanimodi might have a perspective of killing is wrong. I might have a perspective of killing is right, but that is not the way ethics is understood. Ethics is understood as what we do in sciences. Especially positive science always uh, uh, gives answer for the questions like what is the speed of light? They say 6.99797 into 10 to the power of 8 meters per second. That is how science performs. What is? But in normative science, what we do is, normative science is also having specific methodology. But what we do in normative science is, we try to set certain norms, certain rules, or certain prejudices. And here, what we are trying to see is whether it is an emotional one, or to put a very plain answer, whether it is rational for me to say killing is right or wrong in that situation, devoid of my emotions. Because I should not be emotionally motivated, because emotion is a fleeting one. It changes from 1 minute to another minute to another minute to another minute. But why do we always look upon sciences as a better discipline? Because of its objectivity. Irrespective of whether you like it or I like it, physics stands alone. Whether you like it or I like it, chemistry stands alone. Like that, positive science will be operating. But unlike normative science, we don't have objects like deciding what is. So here we have a fundamental question: what ought to be, or what should be, or how one should have behaved in that situation. For answering those questions, I should not be taking my refuge in emotion. I should try to validate using my reason. That is one idea. So to give a proper definition, I can say that ethics is a discipline which judges human contact. So you understand every word here, human contact, from the viewpoint of certain norms or standards that we set. So when I use the word human behavior, two things can be popping up in your mind. Psychology also studies about human behavior. Philosophy is also studying about human behavior. But psychology is not concerned with whether that action is a right action or a wrong action. There can be a psychopath. Psychology is least bothered about his action to be right action or wrong action. Psychology is very much worried why he has performed that action, not that whether it is right action or a wrong action. Another one, it also talks about the contact. The human contact is like, if I put it very bluntly, are my action done out of free will, or out of emotion, or out of instinctiveness? So there is a term in biology we call instinct. So instinctive actions are not considered as, or they don't stand for the standard of an action to be judged. That is why when an accident happens, the perpetrator or the person who has done the accident is not given the highest kind of punishment, because it is an accident. But whereas when you plan and kill a person, it is called murder. Murder is punishable. Why? Because there is a motive, there is an intention, and there is a free will for that person to decide not to do the other way. But still he performed it, which is not in congruence with the norms a society is having. But in accident, he could not have done the other way, because there is a brake failure. He slept, he didn't sleep for 3 or 4 days. So accident occurred. In both the places, a life is at stake. In accident also a person was killed. In murder also a person was killed. But the consequence, or the validation of accident or the validation of murder are entirely different. So that means the intention and the motive of the person who is performing that action is also important. And one more thing is, ethics do not stand for both the extremes. Like you have the animal kingdom. We don't say that animals have done this action in the right way or wrong way, because animals perform their action based on instinct. And the other aspect you take, if you believe in God or if you believe in angels or something like avatars, we don't call them, we don't invite them for the standard of right and wrong. It is only for the human sphere that an action to be validated as right actions or wrong action. So what are the terms that we use? Like the standard, I said, a standard like a metric scale. What are the standards or what are the terms of standards that we keep? One standard we always say for an action, whether it is a right action or wrong action. Another one we say whether it is good or bad. So what is good or what is bad? A good for you will be bad for me. I give this example to my students. Think about this flower called rose. How this flower rose will be appealing for a person who is in deathbed, and for a person for a guy who wanted to propose his love to a girl. See, both the people are seeing the same object called rose, but the moment a person who is in deathbed sees that rose, Yama is coming for him. Oh, death is nearing for him. He's scared. For him, it is bad. But the same thing when you talk about rose, like in the Onion movie, na? Like for Remo character, when you show that rose, he will think about his lover. So the object is same, but how people perceive it. Like an action can be moral for one society, can be immoral for another society. Like stealing. There is a specific, if you are reading ஐவகை நிலங்கள், இதுல பாத்தீங்கன்னா குறிஞ்சி முல்லை மருதம் நெய்தல் பாலை. If you take to that desert terrain, stealing is a virtue for them because they don't have any occupation. So you cannot call that action as an immoral action. For them, that action is a moral action. But for a person, for a merchant who has lost his money, for him it is immoral. So these are all the terms of standards that we see. But is it that every time we use this standard? Yeah, most of the time the standard is set or the benchmark is set based on certain assumptions. One assumption I can always tell is in India, for example, in India, standards are set based on, I'm not saying all, majority of the standards are set based on religion. So if the religion sanctions it, it is called right action. If the religion does not sanction it, it is called a wrong action. And nowadays we all can say, now the standard is set by the law, the Constitution of India. So the Constitution of India says that what is the right action and what is the wrong action. Not only the law, even evolution. Evolution also says that a standard, how it evolves, how I have evolved as a person. So how these things have been done. So from an evolutionary perspective also I can keep standard. From a pleasure perspective, this is very beautiful thing in ethics. Socrates once used to say, rather than a pig being satisfied, let a human being dissatisfied. So he sets the standard based on pleasure. If the pleasure is more, that doesn't mean that I have to go and take that action. I can behave like a pig and quench my pleasure, but that is not the way Socrates has thought about it. He thought that there is an ethical standard for me in terms of pleasure also. I, as a human being having reason, I should refrain from certain impulses, which an animal cannot do it. So that is why he used this one. Let a pig be satisfied rather than a man be dissatisfied. Nothing wrong in it. That is what we call it as standards. So there are different disciplines in ethics. I'll just try to see the time now and now. So these are the 4 branches of ethics. One is called normative ethics, applied ethics, meta-ethics, descriptive ethics. So normative ethics is the one which sets the standards or which sets the norms or levels. Whereas applied ethics, what are the standards set by normative ethics? You do and apply it in a day-to-day life. For example, euthanasia. Anyone heard of this term euthanasia? What does euthanasia means? Many of you are science students. Na? Can anyone tell me what does euthanasia means? Please unmute and tell me. What does euthanasia means? Euthanasia. Euthanasia means no one. You heard of this term euthanasia?
So
India's-
killing someone based on the mercy, if someone is terribly sick, they
Very
may
good.
kill them to protect them from the pain.
Very good, very good. Nirupam, what you said is right. Euthanasia means we call it as mercy killing or good death. How a killing can be merciful or how a killing can be a good death. These things arises in today's technological world. If a person has been in artificial life support for almost 32 years, killing that person and removing his suffering, is it good or bad? Question. You must have heard of this case of Aruna Shamba from Mumbai, where she has been bedridden for almost 32 years. Or you must have seen this movie of Nan Kadavul. What Arya is telling. Arya used to tell that for a person who cannot live, I give a grace that he can die. For a person who is not fit to live, I give a power, it is his death. So, not only euthanasia, even you talk about abortion. So these are all the things that have evolved very recently, or surrogate mother, or twin babies, or many things. Because of the technological intervention, there are things that needs a different discipline altogether to have answering the question. One important thing, because of this technological world like artificial intelligence, you must have heard about Sophia. Anyone heard about Sophia of Saudi Arabia? Who is this Sophia of Saudi Arabia? Sophia of Saudi Arabia. Anyone?
Sir, it's an AI.
Yeah, very good, yes. If I'm going to marry Sophia, what will be the consequence of it? I'm not joking. This is a thing which is happening in Japan. People are having relationship with andro-humanoid robot. You go and buy a toy and you have a relationship with that toy. Nothing is hampering it. There are many kind of technological interventions on human experiences and human actions are creeping up. Or you have a Google car. If a Google car is going to make an accident, or Waymo car, who has to be accounted for? In India, we are going to introduce Google car. If we are introducing Google car, an accident occurs. Who has to be blamed? Who has to be held responsible? Can anyone tell me? If a Google car commits a accident. So these are all the new ethical problems. I do IVF, in vitro fertilization. I cannot have a baby, so I take a donor from my father, and my wife is having a baby. So what is the relationship between me and my baby? Whether I am the brother or I am the father. What is the relationship between my father and the baby whom my wife is having? So these are all the questions that arise out of technological interventions, which will be discussed as part of applied ethics. But another important area called metaethics. Metaethics is a discipline in ethics which will focus on the origin of values or the origin of morals. From where these morals come from, what these morals really actually refer for, how to understand these morals. That is what a discipline called metaethics. But descriptive ethics is very common one, like how all of us feel about certain morality. Like when I was in the beginning asking Nirupama or somebody, they said that killing is wrong. It is the belief that collectively most of us have. Or misogyny, is it right or wrong? Adulteration, is it right or wrong? There is a common perception based on certain morality. Somebody will say adulteration is wrong. Somebody will say, sir, same-sex marriage should be allowed. It is my right. It is my body. It is my gender. I should be allowed to have marriage with my same sex. What is the problem you are having? You people have always structured the society as dichotomized, like masculine and feminine. What will be the LGBTQ will be asking for? So these are all the questions or the standards that we keep in mind. So now, as the topic says that universal values, so my question is, what is this value is all about? So how to understand values? I was going through certain literatures. They say that value as a term is imported from economics, because the object which appeases my appetite or my luxury, all those things which is useful for me are considered as valuable. So that is how the word has been imported. But how it has to be understood from an ethical perspective. So in ethics, what are the things that we can call as values? Like we have honesty, sincerity, punctuality, right, friendship, integrity. All these things we are calling it as values. But values from which perspective? Why honesty is considered as a value? Is it really a value? Being honest, not cheating in the exam, I get the low score. Somebody who's cheating in the exam was getting a very high score. What is the value there? How I have to understand this value? People who are telling lies are going up in life. People who are doing all the bad things are doing everything good in life. People who are sincere are not getting anything. Then how to accommodate, how to make sense of this value? So ethics talks about it. How to understand value, from which perspective a value should be understood. And another one which we make it very clear is there is a distinction between facts and values. Like both are by-value. Like fact, we discuss something in science, no? What is right and what is wrong. In fact, sorry, I misplaced it. In fact, what we do is we consider only what is truth and what is falsity. We don't bother about any other thing. Is it true or false? That is how, like science doing. Whether this board is white or black. If it is white, true. Yes. If it is black, false. That's it. That no more questions. Atom bomb. If you drop it, it will blast it. That's it. Whether you are dropping on human being or whether you're dropping in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it's least bother. Whereas values talks about not about the truth and falsity, but about the rightness and wrongness of an action. That is why value is very, very important. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there are many standards that we keep. Religion as a standard, evolution as a standard, law as a standard. So now what we can do is we can try and see what is the problem in keeping values as a standard. Let me keep value as a standard and see whether this standard is workable or not. So two important things. So how there are many types of values, but which value is the most important one? If I'm going to ask, right is also a value, good is also a value, which value you will vouch for? Understand this one. Right is a value, good is also a value. Which one is more important? Or which one you feel is a appealable value? Anyone? Anyone can throw some light? See, why do we study? Because to get a degree. Why to get a degree? Because you should have a job. Why to get a job? Because you have to get money. Why to get money? Then only you will have a luxurious life, pleasurable, good wife, good husband, a very good house. All these things will come only because of money. If you want to earn money, you should get a job. If you want to get a job, you should get a degree. So this degree, all these things, money and all, are not intrinsic values. They are only instrumental values that give rises to some other thing. So intrinsic values are values that are good in itself. We do the right thing because when always doing the right thing will lead us to good. Good is the end. And Socrates will be talking about the summum bonum, highest good. But I'm not going to dwell more into that. So what is the functions of the human mind and what are the corresponding values that we have? Like the functions of the human mind is tripartite, like we can call knowing, feeling, and willing. This knowing, this feeling, and this willing, all three are having corresponding values. What are those values stands for? Is it really right to say those are all values? Psychology only studies about this knowing, feeling, and willing. Psychology is not bothered about whether an action is a right action or a wrong action, but we do in ethics. So knowing what is this human mind is corresponding to the intellectual value. Like I said, feeling. The corresponding value for feeling is aesthetics value. And the corresponding feeling for willing is, here we put it goodness, but it is moral values. See, intellectual values is very important, aesthetic value is also very important, and moral value is also very important for a human being. You cannot say, I wanted only moral values, I'm least bothered about intellectual values. No, you cannot survive. No, I wanted only intellectual values and moral values. I have no space for beauty. No, aesthetic value is also very, very important. Appreciation for beauty, that is very important. Without that, creativity cannot come. You will become mechanized, or you become like a robot if you are very much worried about intellectual values alone. That's what your ma'am was telling in the beginning. By focusing more on rationality, you become a kind of constructed or deterministic or rational people. There will not be any space for emotions. Emotion is also very, very important. So the relationship between ethics, morality, and value. I talked about values, but what is this morality stands for? Morality, along with ethics, it tries to investigate the validity of the standards that we kept. Whether the standard, what I kept, is a valid standard or not. That is very, very important in discussion. Okay, this is a very, now only I'm just slowly dislodging. I dislodged values. Now I'll dislodge universal values. Why value should be understood from a universal perspective? Two things about universal perspectives. One is, universal means it should be accepted by the majority of the people. Is it really majoritarian? Is democratic? Can we call it as universality? Another one is, what I mean by universality is, it is applicable for everyone, not even a single person should be left out of it. That means equality is the basis of values. Unless and until you don't know, you don't have equality, you cannot call it as a universal values. That means it should be applicable for A to Z. What are the privileges that a Prime Minister of India is having? The same privilege the last citizen of the country also should have. This is called equality. But I am not getting into the discussion between equality and equity. That is not the idea which I am trying to bring in there, because later on this discussion will pop up, because I'm again going to talk about some Indian facts. No? So this equality and equity problem will come. But for the time being, why we are talking about universality means because it is objective in nature, not subjective. My subjective opinion is not important for that value. That is why we always try to back our values based on reason. Emotion is a fleeting one. Emotionally, I can, a person, like for example, a person who is drunk, in the night he will be having so much of fight. He is in a different euphoria mood. In the morning, what he will say, he will take the other stand. So when you are induced, or when you are not in the proper mood, so those things cannot be called as universal. So things that are decisions that are made out of reason alone get the appeal of universality. But that is questionable. I'm not saying that everything what I'm saying is acceptable to everyone. At least what I can say is, we can always agree to disagree. In that point, I'm making an agreement. You can disagree with me on everything what I'm talking, but at least we are agreeing to disagree with each other. That is how universal values will emerge. This deontological ethics is one important one of German philosopher called Immanuel Kant, where he brings in or tries to make ethics as objective. It is very difficult to call right and wrong as objective, good and bad as objective, or moral and immoral as objective. But here is a philosopher, a German philosopher, who tried to understand, or who tried to make ethics more objective in nature. In his categorical imperative, we call it as categorical imperative. He says that, I quote, he says that, so act that the maxim of your action is taken as a law universal. He says that maxim is the word is very important. He says that the subjective principle in which you work should be based on reason. Once you work on reason, everybody who is having a reason will work the same way. So your action is a good action. So once you put focus on reasoning, it gets the appeal of universality. This is what Immanuel Kant wanted to say about ethics. So the development of ethical theories, I am not trying to get deeper into it. I'll take 2-3 minutes to see, because I use the word righteousness in the title in the beginning. So I wanted to do some justice towards it, but I cannot go deeper into this thing. So in the development of moral philosophy in the West, or in the world, you take West means it is all world means it is always having a Eurocentric bias. We all know it, and we are also a victim of it. It is always a Eurocentric view we call the world view. In ancient Greece, we have people like Socrates. Socrates is the first person who is bringing in the values for the very first time. He says that before Socrates, there is only an investigation about the nature. Socrates is the first person who asked the question, know thyself. And he makes a statement. Virtue is knowledge. What kind of a statement? It is unbelievable at the time. He says that knowledge is not accumulation of fact. It is only virtue that is knowledge. When you have virtue only, that knowledge becomes a proper knowledge. People who are knowledgeable are the one who are doing all the criminal activities in the world. So he says that knowledge without virtue is a kind of handicap. It is like knowledge becomes the form and virtue becomes the root. So you cannot have the root without the shoot system. So it both are complementary with each other. So in that way, Socrates is very worth mentioning. And Plato, he took the virtue or the virtue of knowledge is virtue towards the idea of good. He says that the idea of good is very, very important. Everyone have to strive for it. That is the highest good of everyone. We have to strive for it. And then we have Plato. Plato is a very remarkable one. In his work Nicomachean Ethics, or you talk about Plato in his work Republic. In his Nicomachean Ethics, he says that he is the person who was first time talking about fairness. Fairness is the highest virtue is telling. That means everyone should be given equal opportunity. Even if it is a property sharing or water sharing or wealth sharing, it should be fairly distributed. And this idea, I remember it correctly, this idea is very much taken by people like John Rawls and Amartya Sen. John Rawls, I mentioned, John Rawls talks about distributive justice. How to understand distributive justice? Why justice should be distributive? Because unless and until justice is not distributed, it is not a justice at all. And this idea was later taken by people like Amartya Sen, the Nobel laureate. And we have Epicureanism, Stoicism, and this utilitarianism. Utilitarianism comes in two shapes. One of Jeremy Bentham, another one is John Stuart Mill, who talks that an action is right action when it gives pleasure. That's it. But there is a difference. Pleasure for the individual or pleasure for the group. One will be talking like the movie Nayagan, where Kamal used to say, "Nalu per nalla irukkanumna eduvume thappu kediyadu." That is one sect of utilitarianism. It is called as altruism. Maximum pleasure for the maximum number of people. Another one comes like the dialogue of Ajit Kumar. This is called egoism. Egoism on the one hand, altruism on the one hand. Pleasure for one is very, very important. This is one school of thought. Pleasure for everyone is important. Maximum pleasure for the maximum number of people is important. That is another school of thought. I talked about deontological ethics of Immanuel Kant, where he talks about do duty only for the sake of duty. Don't do it for the sake of this or for the sake of that. That will demolish the idea of duty. Duty has to be performed only from the sense of duty. Kadamai, kadamaikaga cheyunga, not because of anything. You study for the enjoyment of study, not for anything. If you are looking into the degree, then it is not the proper way of studying. That is what deontological ethics is. If you are playing, play for the game of cricket. If you are eating, eat for the sake of eating. Don't think about any other. That is deontological ethics. But since I use the word dharma, so I'm just another 15-20 minutes. I might wind up, not a big deal. Another 17 minutes is more. So how this concept of righteousness is looked from an Indian perspective. So in Indian perspective, it is more like the word dharma becomes very important, and dharma is not having any kind of a proper translation. I accept my defeat here. I tried harder to find out what this dharma means. You call it as virtue? No, it is not fitting there. You call it as righteousness? It is not fitting there, because it has its own essence. The moment you try to translate a word, it will lose its essence. For example, I always tell my students how God is translated in Tamil. Can anyone tell me? This is a simple question. How God is translated in Tamil? God. The word God.
Kadavul, sir.
Kadavul. Kanimani said that it is Kadavul. But the meaning of the word God there and the God here, the essence of the word are entirely different. Here, God is called as good, omniscient, omnipotent, something like that. But in Tamil, the word God, it is a person or an entity who is transcendent. Kada is transcendent of everything. Ellathiyum kadandiruppavar. And he is immanent simultaneously. Ellathukkulleyum iruppavar dhaan kadavul. See the translation, how it failed. One who transcends everything and one who is immanent in everything is called as God. Here you call God as good, obedient, like that. But a person who is studying this word from translated from English to Tamil or Tamil to English will lose these nuances. That is why I don't want to translate that word dharma, and I used it dharma itself. But I can tell you the etymology. Etymologically, what this word dharma means to burst forth, or to grow or uphold together. That is the etymology of the word dharma. And dharma, most of the time, somewhat equivalent to, we can call it as it's a virtue, it's a righteousness, something we can call it, but it is not exactly the one. Or dharma is the siddhanta, or the an equivalent word for dharma. I think in Tamil we have aramun solluvolla. You talk about Thiruvalluvar, he talks about aram, arathuppaal. Aram is what you call it as dharma. A bit closer, not exactly. Both are a different one, but still a closer word I can say. So how this dharma is understood in the Vedas and the Gita? That is one. I just thought of giving it in just. This will take another 12 minutes, not more than that. How this dharma is understood in the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita, in the Buddhist philosophy, in Jaina and in Charvak. I'll finish it with a proper note in Charvak philosophy. So according to the Vedas, they call it as dharma is called as rita. Rita means there is a cosmic order and there is a moral order. Even the god and goddesses cannot change it. Like you know about Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva also, when he gives this vara, he cannot change it because he is bound to follow it. Even though they are called as the gods, or they are called as the rishis, or they are called as Indra or Vayu or whoever it might be, Devargal we call it, not Devas. So even they cannot bypass. That means in India we had the sense of moral order some 1500 BC itself. There is a moral order that exists. There is somebody who is the custodian of the order, And that order cannot be changed even by the gods, even by the greatest of the greatest gods. You call it as Vishnu, or you call it as Shiva, or you call it as Brahma. All three are bound by that. That means the order is more powerful than the gods. That means they have to follow certain the movement of the planets. It is an order. It is called the celestial order. Day and night. It is a celestial order. If nobody can change it, that is what we accepted in the Vedic period. And also there are moral obligation. We call that as a duty. What is the duty of an householder? It has been clearly mentioned in the Vedas. The duty for the teachers to respect the teacher. The duty for the father. The duty for the god. It is called as Rana. Devarana, Pitrarana, something Rishirana, something like that. But I'm not getting deeper into it. But one concept which I wanted to emphasize in the Bhagavad Gita is the concept of Sthita Prajnan and Nishkama Karma. You all know about the story of the Bhagavad Gita. Like, it is a sermon which is happening at a battlefield where Arjuna is denying to fight, and he took refuge in Krishna and asking, here are all my kith and kin, how I can fight and how I can kill them. Then Lord Krishna takes the form of Vishnu and he propagates certain ideas or certain values. The story is for weak-minded people, but you have to understand the philosophy, the Siddhanta behind it. So there he says that the concept of Sthita Prajnan means one should have an equanimity of mind. Equanimity of mind means you should not go to both the extremes. If something very happy, the entire day you will be laughing. If something sorrow, you will sit there in the corner and start crying. That is not what a stable mind is. A stable mind is like a person who takes success and failure equally. I can just to say it like Mahendra Singh Dhoni. So where he will not show any kind of an emotional outburst compared to Rohit Sharma. You all can equate it at least now. Na? Rohit Sharma outbursts. He enjoys, also he gets angry very easily. But here is a person who maintains his cool. That's why we call him as Captain Cool. Na? So this is called equanimity of mind. But why equanimity of mind? So why Arjuna refused to fight in the battlefield? Because they are his relatives. I cannot kill them. That time he says that when you are worried about performing your action based on your emotion, those actions cannot be considered as an action at all. You have to make your action like desireless to the fruit of action. This is the concept of Nishkama Karma. When you are studying, you should not worry about the mark which you are getting. So this today, you are attending this lecture. Attending this lecture is attendance bound. Otherwise, you people would not have attended. And the faculty members have to conduct this lecture because they are university bound. Because UGC set some standards, some norms that value education should be inculcated. Because UGC has said, the university has to oblige. Because the university is obliging, the department has to take it up. Because the department is making it happening, students are asked, our students are ordered to attend it. Otherwise, you will not get an attendance. Otherwise, who will be attending it? No. Who's going to attend value education and all? It's all simply stupid and nonsense talk for blah 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 something. You people will talk, nothing will happen because the society functions differently, and you people talk about rights, values, good, justice. Where I can put it in a day-to-day life? When I go out, what is the use of it? That is a question we all have now. Even I do have. I'm honestly accepting those kind of questions. But how to make sense of it? That is what the idea. So another one which in during the Vedic period people talked a lot about is this Artha, Kama, Dharma, and Moksha. See, these are all very easy terms. You need not worry about whether this is Sanskrit or that one. See, Artha means nothing but wealth. Accumulation of wealth is Artha. And Kama means enjoyment, pleasure. And Dharma means righteousness. And moksha. These are all the four purusharthas. An individual has to go through all these four in his life if he wanted to attain liberation. But here, look at this one. Though Indian philosophy prescribes artha, kama, dharma, and moksha, there is a very subtle thing in that. They say that Dharma should be considered as first. Why means the wealth which you are getting should be grounded in dharma. You cannot go and cheat and accumulate more and more wealth. By killing the other people, you cannot take more wealth. And even karma, enjoyment should be a righteous karma. Dharma based karma is very important. If you are doing your wealth in the yardstick of dharma, if you are doing karma in the yardstick of dharma, then only there is a possibility of attaining moksha. How they might have thought about this idea? These things originated some 1500 BC, I'm telling you, not today. But people, you cannot do these kind of things. We cannot do these kind of things today because we have been so busy in all our activities. Right from the baby started to be growing inside the womb till his deathbed, everything is already prefixed. Parents, as a father, I'll be doing which school he has to study, where you have to go, this one, everything is like timetable is already prefixed. No free choice to have a leisure. But those days, people had leisure and they had that vision. So they said, artha and kama should be bounded by dharma. Without dharma, getting artha is waste. Without dharma, getting kama is waste. And this concept, this is the dharma that the Vedic prefer. See, I'm not getting into the difficulties of it, just for the sake of saying from Indian perspective, how the Indians have seen, what are the dharmas only I'm saying. One is artha, kama, dharma, and moksha is important for an individual. And another one they are saying, this is also a kind of dharma. Dharma means there are 4 class in a society. They are called the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, and the Shudras. And these 4 classes of the society has to perform their duties. One is the priestly class, or the doctrination of values. We call the Brahmin, the priestly class. Another one is the Kshatriya, the warrior class. And the Vaishya. Vaishyas are called as the merchant class. And the Shudra, who has to serve all the 3. So this class is set in that society during that time for a kind of cooperative life. And one important thing which I can tell you, unlike what is happening today, this is the root cause of the caste system, what is happening today. But when it happened during that time, the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras are attempted to make in a horizontal way, not in a vertical way. Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra are equal. That is the idea. But later on, because of the people who wants to corrupt it or who wants to use it for their own personal ways, they made this horizontal class into a vertical class. So then the division of labor became division of laborers. By birth itself, I've been decided. That is a wrong consequence of it. Division of labor is the idea. My hand cannot do all the activity what my leg is doing. My eyes cannot do the activity of my ears. This is what they call it as division of labor. But after that, what happened is, instead of the division of labor, it became a laborer division. If you are reading Annihilation of Caste by B.R. Ambedkar, recently Arundhati Roy has written a foreword for it. If you get a time, read it. He will be giving a historical explanation about this kind of origination and the way it which reached stupidity, or the way in which it reached fanaticism. He'll be explaining it in a beautiful way. These things and all I have explained it, nothing to worry about. And another one which they had during that time is the dharma. Means they say that it is the stages, like Rajinikanth used to say in Badsha, the life is divided into 8. Like that, in our tradition, during the Vedic tradition, we had 4 process of life. One is the brahmacharya, the first 25 years, next 25 years, next 25 years, next 25 years. First 25 years, you have to study. Now you are in the brahmacharya period, not to indulge in any other thing, just to read and what you do, develop your talents. Then next to 25, 50, what you will do? You will get married you become an householder, get kid and everything. Then Vanaprastha. After 50 years, what you have to do? Just take a solitude life. Just go to a forest, enjoy the life. Keep your distance from family, because keeping close towards the family will give you pain and trauma. That is what this Vedic system is telling. Then sannyasa, finally become like a monk, and then spend your life. Don't come near to the family at all. So these are some kind of a prescription for how a life should be happening according to the Vedic period. But talking only about the Vedic period is an injustice for me, because it should be, I said, it's from an Indian perspective. So I just took Buddhist ethics also. So this is one of the beauty. Buddhist ethics is one of the most brilliant narration I can tell. Why? Because Buddha never bothered about, though the Vedic people bothered about the origination of moral and all, Buddha never bothered about the origination and anything. He just gives one small example in his Tripitakas. He says that when a bird has been pinched with that arrow, the first thing to do is to remove the arrow and stop the suffering of the bird. Not to worry about from where the arrow has come, from where the bird has come, whether this arrow is made of gold or silver or platinum. That is not the question here. The bird is in suffering. Remove the arrow and control the suffering. That alone you have to do. This is exactly his philosophy. Don't worry about whether God exists or not. Don't worry about where I came from. Don't worry about where I will go after my death. Nothing is you need to worry about it. The only thing you have to worry is how to stop suffering in this world. How? And then there are criticism on Buddhism. People, I don't know, I don't think people who have understood Buddhism will talk like that. They say that the Westerners, especially the Western people, they say that Indian philosophy is entirely pessimistic in nature, because Buddha talks about what is dukkha. Dukkha is suffering. Dukkha samudaya. The entire world is clouded with suffering. There are 12 reasons for the suffering, he will say. So what he calls as suffering: birth is suffering, disease is suffering, old age is suffering, death is suffering. But what is the reason for the suffering? He says there are 12 links: birth, will to born, all those things he will say. But he's not stopping. That is why I'm saying Indian philosophy is not pessimistic, it is optimistic. He says that it is possible to stop suffering. Dukkha nirodha is possible. But another way, he is going a step ahead and saying how to stop that. Dukkha nirodha marga. So there is a way in which you can stop suffering. He calls that as detachment. In Buddhist philosophy, a person who is attaining liberation is called nirvana. Nirvana means blown out light. So once the person gets detached from all the enjoyment, the life becomes very smooth for him. And he gives 8-fold path to get rid of this suffering. If you have time, just go and read it. A beautiful narration of the entire Western people are slowly getting into Buddhist philosophy these days. But what I am saying is, he says that there is a possibility and there is a way to get rid of this suffering. Another one important school, since I said Buddhism, another one important school, I will say that it is Jainism. Jainism is another beautiful school. Buddhists talk about only the sufferings of the humans, where Jaina philosophy will be talking about every single living being, starting from single cell bacteria towards human being. All of them have to be treated equally. You must have seen the Shvetambras and Digambras. Na? They will have the mask on their head. They will sweep the floor and they will walk, because not even an insect should be killed there. Another extreme form of ahimsa. They don't even brush their teeth, because by brushing the teeth, the small organisms which are in the mouth will die. Because of that, they don't brush their teeth. Another extreme form where equality for life in every sphere. It is called as a kind of panpsychism. That means a plant is having a life. You cannot cut the plant. You should not pluck the fruit and eat, because it is having life. They have to wait for the fruit to fall from the tree, and then only they will eat. That is another tradition we had in India. The 24th Tirthankara we call Vardhamana Mahavira, Jinna, the conqueror. So it started from Rishabhadeva till Parshavana, the 23rd Tirthankara. 24th Tirthankara is Vardhamana Mahavira. We celebrate it, no? Jain Day, something like that. But the philosophy, we celebrate all those things, but we forgot the Siddhanta of them. That is what the irony part here. Even when Ashoka, because of Ashoka, yeah, you want to ask something? You know about Ashoka. Ashoka followed Buddhism, but because of him only many of the things in Buddhism got flourished. For example, the 4 lines. How many of us know that the 4 lines are nothing but the 4 noble truths of Buddhism? In Sharanath, he erected that pillar, but the 4 lines are nothing but the 4 noble truths of Buddhism. We accept it only because Ashoka has inculcated, but the Siddhanta we have lost it. That is one. We always look at the Western for our ethical ideals. And I guarantee I am a person who studied both Western philosophy and Indian philosophy. In both the domains, I can challenge that the kind of ethical and moral principles that we have in India is nowhere comparable even in the West. Western is a very much a materialistic world. Don't bother and don't go there. We knew that materialism will fail. That is why the movement from materialism to spiritualism, right during the time of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro civilization. So it's getting towards materialism is at one point you will find it waste. No? You cannot go on the accumulation of pleasure for a longer time. That's why you cannot live in Swarga for a longer time. Swarga is a place where it is full of joy, pleasure. Pleasure, too much of pleasure is also a pain. You cannot have too much of sugar. It is a pain there. So what is moksha is, it is free from suffering. Moksha. It is not the state of pleasure, because pleasure, the body cannot take beyond a point. Too much of pleasure is painful. And these are all the steps they are saying. These are all the ways in which one can condition oneself by following ahimsa, satya. You can say, all these values are outdated. You take one value and try to follow it in your life. You will become the best person there. I can easily tell you. One small value you take. It's that. And finally, coming to, I just came to the end of my presentation. Just 2 more minutes. And there is another school. I talked about one extreme, which talks about meta ethics, and then Buddhism talking about human suffering, and then I talked about Jainism, which talks about every living species, starting from the single-celled organism, bacteria, plants, 3-celled, 4-celled, 5-celled, 6 and 7 cells, everything they have talked, and they talked about the equality. There is another school of thought. Few people might like it. What is the ethics of Charvaka? This existed in India. Nobody will believe it. The founder of the school is called Brihaspati. He says that only 3 things are very important in life: eat, drink, and be merry. That's it. Don't worry about any other thing. All these things are nonsense. They attack the Vedic people. They say that it is the Vedic priests, the Brahmins, the cunning people. See, they use the word. They want to by duping us, they want to continue their life. That is why they have brought this concept of heaven and hell. There is nothing called as heaven and hell. Don't worry about heaven and hell. Death of this body is death. That's it. You don't worry about from where you came. You don't worry about from where you are going. They say going to a larger extent and say, rather than being a peacock tomorrow, let me be a pigeon today and be happy. I'm not going to refuse eating fish because it is having tusks inside it. Fish will have tusks. Life is a conglomeration, or life is a mixture of both pleasure and pain. How you can deny pleasure because there is a pain? You cannot deny pleasure, because what's the only thing you have to do is you have to minimize pain and maximize your pleasure. That is how you should be aiming at. Don't listen to these people. These people are cheating. Just listen to the name of the school is called Lokayata. That means the view of the common people. And last two here. And in accepting that means the pleasure is the most important thing according to the Charvak philosophy. They say that earlier I told about the 4 Purusharthas, like how Thiruvalluvar used to say, Aram, Porul, Inbam, Arathapal, Purutpal, Arathapal, Purutpal, Kamathapal, and then we did it. So now what Charvaka is telling, don't worry about Dharma and Moksha. Dharma and Moksha is irrelevant. Leave, keep it aside. Only two things are important in life. One is Artha. Wealth is very, very important. Why wealth is important? Because when I have wealth only, I will have pleasure. Otherwise, people won't come near to me. We have a person who talks from Charvak's perspective, who's from India and he went to US and he started its own followers. Osho, you must have seen Osho's work and all. Only people who have wealth alone can come for spiritualism. Others cannot even come near to spiritualism because they have their own problem. And then these people, they asked very interesting questions. Ask these kind of questions. He says that there is nothing called as virtue. Those are humbug, nothing like virtue and all. If the Vedic people are really right in telling that, there is one question which the Charvaka philosophy used to ask. In Shraddha. Shraddha means there is nothing for the departed soul. We used to keep pinda. He says that the Charvaka people ask the Vedic people, by keeping pinda here, how the person there in the Swarga is going to eat this food? If that is the case, for a person who is sitting in first floor, you can put the food in the ground floor. He will eat it. Then why should a traveler carry food? You can cook and put the food in the home itself. He can eat it from there. Why you have to carry food? None, they attacked very vehemently. Their questions are very, very powerful. I just say one story and then I'll stop it there. Once a Charvakan, I'm an admirer of Charvakan. Once a Charvakan was drawing water from a well and he is pouring the water on the roadside. A Brahmin guy who was walking that side, he asked, why are you pouring water here? He said, I have my field some 30 kilometers away from there. So I'm watering my field from here. Then this Vedic person, he asked, are you mad? If your agricultural field is 30 kilometers from here, how come you can water your field by pouring the water here? Then the Charvaka is asking, if that is the case, then tell me how, for a person who is staying in heaven, you are performing certain sacrifices here and telling that this sacrifice is going to reach him. That is the question he asked. But very funny way of, you can read Charvaka, one written by Devi Prasad Chattopadhyaya. He has written a very good thing called, the book name itself, Lokayata, another book called Indian Materialism, very interesting. But what is the point which I am trying to derive as Dharma is, I have never taken a stand here. One is, you can see Dharma from a metaphysical perspective. That means there is already a given law. Then Dharma alone for the perspective of human suffering. Then Dharma for everyone. That means Dharma for a single-celled thing to human being. Another one aspect of life which says that ethics, all these things are people who are, the Dharma concept is a humbug. Don't believe in Dharma. Dharma is a nonsense. This is the only life you have. You enjoy the life, maximize the pleasure, and minimize the pain. That is the be all and end all of it. Don't worry about any other thing. The life which we have is the only life. Don't sacrifice it for any other reason. If you stand by it, that is the ethics, or that is the ethical standard that one can have. This is the idea which the Charvakans will be telling. So I'll stop it here. I think I'm running beyond the time. I'll stop it here, and I'm waiting if any questions that needs to be clarified. I'm open for discussion, and I'm a person who enjoy interaction. This is first time I think I'm doing it like monotonous. I hate this kind of if it will be very much pleasurable, because I always like your interaction with me. See, thinking about the values or standards we have discussed here, think about these concepts. Should euthanasia considered as right or wrong? Think about it. That's what. How you are going to validate it? Nothing is right and wrong here, but how are you making to set standard is the question. Capital punishment, is it right or wrong? How to defend it or how to accept it? That is what you have to see. If you're saying it is right, You cannot say emotionally that it is right because kill him. That's it. Why? What is the use of living here? Not that one. You have to take a rational standard. An abortion. Should abortion be considered as right or wrong from moral perspective? So these are all very triggering questions, which I thought if you wanted, you can think about it and you can reflect on your free time. So I'll stop with this. Thank you. Thank you very much for your patient listening. And I take this opportunity to thank Satish sir and Duraiswamy sir for giving me an opportunity. It would have been very nice if we had an interactive session, and I'm open for questions. Thank you. Thank you very much. Over to you, sir, Satish sir or ma'am. Over to you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. And really, it is a thought-provoking session with you. And thank you, sir. On behalf of Department of Career Development, College of Science and Humanities, SRM IST, it is my privilege to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. My heart fills with lots of gratitude and respect for our distinguished guest for his enlightening talk on the subject. Thank you, sir. And I would like to thank the Dean, Deputy Dean, and management, technical team for their huge support at all times. And my special thanks to our department faculties and students and those who are attend this session for their active participation. Thank you, sir.
I think there are a lot of questions. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, students, do you have any questions? Sir is waiting. If you have any questions, you can ask him. You can drop it in the chat box if you don't want to unmute. It was a wonderful session, sir.
Thank you.
I
Thank
hope
you.
the students are taking up the questions that you've posted in their free time.
Yeah,
Abortion
sure.
is a very, is a hot topic now in the West. I hope our students are also, discussing it with their, friends and peers.
Okay.
And I hope this, lecture has kindled their spirit on the topic values. So thank you so much for joining us.
Hopefully. Thank you, ma'am. I have shared the slide with sir. If anyone is interested, you can ask them to mail me or ask. They wanted to ask, they are free to ask. And the PowerPoint is there with sir. You can always share it.
Sure, sir. Sure. We'll share it with the students. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
sir.
ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Satish sir. Thank you very much,
Okay.
sir. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Students, the attendance link is there in the chat box. Please click on the link and give your attendance and feedback. Thank you for joining.
Can we end the meeting?
Bharat, give 2 minutes. Let
Sure,
them
ma'am.
click
Sure,
on the
I will
link
wait.
so that
Thank you.
they'll not miss the attendance part.
Sure.